Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one yet again based on one of your new suggestions. This one having to do with an amazing encounter, a case that occurred to one person there in Falls City back in the early 1950s. In fact, it's so amazing that is definitely out there when it comes to the entries I have here. This could either be something that is truly otherworldly or from underneath the world. More on that here in a minute. The only problem I have though with this particular case is there's a lot of red flags associated with it. Lots of things that you have to believe in, especially how brief the encounter was and then how it happened to one person. More on that here though in a minute. But in fact, you're looking at a representation of the creature itself, and it has an interesting name too as far as the encounter. It's known as the flying monstrosity of Falls City. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that encounter here, and then I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. See if you believe that this really occurred, or again, if there's a lot of red flags on it. So here's essentially what happened. This happened back in 1956. Problem is, we don't have the exact date associated with it, nor do we have the exact location. I mean, LEC, it's there in Falls City, which is an area there in Nebraska, but there's no exact spot where you could say where this occurred. And on this fateful day or fateful night, that's where John Hanks, although that's not even the person's real name, it's a pseudonym for that person instead, encountered this creature. And then again, that's where they had this very memorable experience that to this day is apparently still talked about. But here's what occurred. There in that time period, that's when John Hanks was out late one night. Have no idea if he was coming home, let's say, from a bar, or if he was leaving his work shift, something along those lines. But either way, though, presumably he was out walking because this was an encounter that had him seeing this creature almost face to face. But he was out there walking when all of a sudden he saw what he described as a hideous looking 9-foot tall creature that was right there in front of him, all to see. Like, this is just something truly otherworldly. But here's how he described it. It was 9 foot tall, but its most interesting thing besides its height was this. It had these wings associated with it, but these weren't wings like you would expect, like a natural part of its body. Who knows, maybe it was, and we just don't know, like, obviously how that species works. But either way, though, they looked mechanical. In fact, these wings looked like they were strapped on, like it was almost made out of a shiny metal, like some form of aluminum. On top of that, it had this panel that was on its chest, which looked like it was also mechanical in nature. There were buttons on it, there were electronic lights, and so on. This was a thing that apparently it was strapped to that allowed it to fly about. In fact, that's how John Hanks saw it. It was flying about at that night, at that very moment that he was walking around that unnamed part of the town. And then that's when he saw what this creature was. And then also it had this unique sound. The way he described it was a hiss, a haunting hiss. In fact, it was so haunting that it actually scared him. It scared him up and down his spine because of what he was hearing. But the best part though is this. The face associated with this creature, whatever this alien was, he described it as having very large but evil looking, almost watery eyes. And in fact, it was looking straight at him throughout this very, very brief encounter. But he stated it was with, quote unquote, unadulterated malevolence, as if it was just pure evil, as if it knew the fear that it was causing, and it was almost enjoying it as it flew about the area that John Hanks was in, and again just staring at him straight. And then his face also seemed to have this, along with the rest of his skin, this almost battered brown leathery looking hide to it. Who knows exactly what that skin was made of, but it definitely did not conform to what we would describe as, let's say, having aesthetic features. No, this definitely looked like it was just, for lack of a better term, a pure monster. So at least in John Hanks' mind, whenever he saw this creature flying about and it was almost targeting him in that very, very brief encounter, he was scared out of his wits, so much so that he thought that it was actually something from hell. That's right. That's what I was mentioning earlier. If it was something underneath the world, there's the idea that this wasn't from outside the world, but instead something that just came about from hell itself, from the depths of hell. And then there it was flying about, almost like a hellspawn of sorts, and then that's when he had that encounter with it. Who knows if this is true? Again, a lot of red flags associated with this story. The fact that we don't know the exact location, there were no other witnesses, it was very, very brief, and on top of that, you have this hellspawn that has also this set of wings with electronic lights and then also switches on there. I don't know. It's a lot to take into consideration. I was actually debating whether to even include it here or on the cryptids and monsters side. But as always, I love sharing this information and then leaving others to speculate and then come up to their own conclusions. If you wonder what exactly happened to this creature, to this alien, well, no sooner did he spot it and it spotted him and it gave him that frightful encounter, then it just decided to leave. In fact, it immediately turned about, went up straight into the air, and then it vanished. I mean, that's how quick this thing was moving. Whatever those quote-unquote wings were, it was enough velocity, if you could even call it that, to be able to reach point A to point B out of sight within seconds. And in fact, what leaves further red flags is, again, this was the appearance that happened to him, but apparently that was it. This creature was never, ever seen again, neither in Falls City or in any other part of America or the world for that matter. If anyone can point to another encounter with something like this involving this alien slash hellspawn slash demon looking thing with these type of flight wings, I would love to hear if you could post a comment or some link associated with it because of that fact. I mean, maybe there is another occurrence, but again, this is just something that takes a lot to take into consideration. But that's it, short and sweet, but that's essentially the encounter associated there with this flying monstrosity of Falls City. Interesting stuff though. No, if this truly was real, then at least for a brief second, this was something that was almost history making when it came to that encounter that John Hanks had. But if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, then please post those comments below. I'd love if there was any help from anybody out there in Falls City that has more local info. If you know anything else about that, who John Hanks was, remember, that's not even his real name. Another red flag, right, when it comes to that type of stuff. So if anybody has more info on this, hard to tell though, because now this is almost 70 years old. But again, any local info, I'd love to hear what those thoughts are too. What do you think too? Is this something on lines of aliens, or is this something else? Did hell actually release something from its own depths, and it happened to have these wings, not like bat-like wings, but instead aviation type wings? Again, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on there too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.